What time is it? Podcast time. It's a celebration. What time is it? Podcast time. Hello, my name is Melissa McQueenie, and I am the host of the It's Your Effin' Journey podcast and a licensed therapist. Well, actually, if a licensed therapist and a life coach had a baby, it would be me. And I am so excited for today's episode for you guys to hear the story of Christal Griffith. She has an Instagram page called She Did Not She Didn't Come Home. She did not come home. It's in the show notes. But it is a Instagram page devoted to women who have been killed or hurt doing their runs and or walks. And she takes her time to research all of these cases to figure out, if the killer has been caught or if it's still at large. You're going to hear her story. It's going to knock your socks off. We also talk about like runner safety and, ways to keep yourself safe and all of that. So it's a really, really important conversation, and there are trigger warnings about, violence and sexual assault and all of those things. So please tread carefully if you need to protect your heart. And I hope you give her a follow and support the work that she does, because it is amazing. She's going to be running the women's marathon in Savannah, Georgia, who I have a dear friend, Donna, who is going to be running that too. So I hope these two connect while they're there and take a picture for me. I actually thought about joining that particular marathon, but it was sold out by the time I researched it. It looks like the most amazing event because it celebrates women. I don't think there's any time limits on the event, so it looks like an amazing, amazing day. So I can't wait for you to hear this episode. If you're listening to this, please join the community, the It's Your Effin' Journey community. It is open. I am providing as many resources as I can, particularly post-election, for the people that need it, for their hearts, ways to get involved. I really want to push community and feeling like you have somewhere to turn. So I know a lot of people are in their feels right now, no matter what side that you're on. There's a lot of feelings, and I want you to protect your hearts. And if it would be helpful for you to use the resources that I've provided, I'd love for you to do that. So the link is going to be in the show notes. Life coaching is closed for this round, but if you are looking for December, hop on my email list, shoot me your email, and I'll get you on that so that you are up to date whenever enrollment opens again. But I love you guys. Thanks for listening. Please don't forget to screenshot and share the episode on social media. Tell me your takeaways. Tell me what you love. Tell me what you hate. Don't tell me what you hate because I don't care. But tell me what you love. And I hope that you're enjoying these interviews as much as I am. I love you for being here, and thank you for your support. Hello, Christal. Welcome to the It's Your Effin' Journey podcast. I am so excited to have you here to share the amazing things that you're doing and sharing. And we've been talking for like a couple minutes, and I'm already fascinated. So, tell me everything. Why did you start this? What brought you here? Everything.
So I started She Didn't Come Home based on the ability that I can still run. I ran New York City last year, really, really sick and did not know. And when I found out how sick I was, and I was like, oh, good, I can't run anymore. So I held off running, and that's when I've learned that I've used running my entire life to cope with mental health. I didn't up here. I was like, something's going wrong. Let's just go for a run. And I learned that when I had to stop running, I had to face my trauma. And then I realized, holy smokes, you're really, really capable of some stuff. And I was talking to my therapist saying, I want to do something for the community. I used to do charity runs. I used to organize runs to raise funds for people. I did all kinds of stuff, but I stopped. I kind of just fell out of it. And that was mental, depression and just places I shouldn't have been in my life. And so in talking to her, I kept jotting down. And then Lake and Riley died. And I knew in that instant what I was meant to do. I had just signed up a month before that for the Every Woman's Marathon. And
That's the one in
I was like,
Savannah, right?
this would be a great opportunity to, yes, yes, in Savannah, Georgia. It's in well, not even 2 weeks, a week and a half. Yeah, a week and a
My
half.
friend is
But
doing
I thought
that.
it'd
Are
be a
you
great
doing
place
that?
because she is, but it's, I am. I thought it would be a really good place to showcase women empowerment movement and bring light to all of these women.
Yeah.
Um, and so I started researching, and I met with a lot of walls of Meta shutting me down, and they just didn't like what I was putting out. And then eventually in April, I started the actual page of She Didn't Come Home instead of off my main page. And I haven't had really a lot of issues with that, but I've learned a lot. So,
So
what do you want
basically
to know?
on
I could keep talking all day.
yeah, so on the Instagram page, She Didn't Come Home, you focus on highlighting all of the women who have not come home from their runs, who have been murdered, raped, attacked, all of the above, right? Like that is so you have sort of dived into all of these stories. Wow.
Yes. I started mainly with just women who, like, if the article said running, I ignored women who were walking until a woman messaged me. I guess it's now been like maybe 2 months, if not more. Um, but she's like, if I was to go missing or if I was killed while out walking, she says, I feel like I wouldn't be included. And I was like, ooh, I am missing a large audience because not every woman runs. There are women who participate in marathons, half marathons, 5Ks, 10Ks, all kinds of stuff who walk and they just do it because they want to be there. And so
Yeah.
when I broadened like that searched, it opened so much. One thing I found is I'm not including it entirely in my research until I can break it down. And you and I were talking about this before we came on, was the Indigenous women who have gone missing. Right now, I've located 220, and that's not including the 147 that I've already found and have stories and details about. Like, these are 220 women who have walked off, put some quotations on walked off, tribal lands, reservations, anything. And one of my friends, she's actually a native, and she told me to look at what happens to women up near the border of Canada and what Canadian officers do to not just women, but all Native Americans up there, especially during the winter months. And I'm like, oh. So with that knowledge, I was able to locate a lot more. And one of the stories is a young lady who went missing in Washington, and I cannot pronounce the tribe. That's another reason I try not to do a lot of videos is I had a blood clot in my brain and my speech isn't perfect and I do not want to butcher people's names like whatsoever,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
or tribal names. But she went missing and then another girl went missing from the same tribe. And I'm like, that's not a coincidence. Like something's happening up there. And neither one of their bodies have ever been found. And you can't just say, oh, it's a runaway, because if it's a runaway, then eventually they're going to be seen somewhere. Um, yeah. So there's just a lot out there. A lot of these cases, starting back when I had to start She Didn't Come Home, I started over, and instead of just picking and choosing different names, I was like, I'm going to start with the very first person, the oldest murder. And when
Yeah.
I did that, the research that came with it was insane. Um, I have not calculated all of like the data, but right now 30 women would be alive. 30, we're going to say 30 women would be alive had the courts and justice system kept men behind bars or ran DNA. Like one guy alone
Mhm.
committed 8 murders after they had DNA and they didn't do anything about it. And so he just kept on and kept on and kept on. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And 2 of those being runners. And
Wow.
uh, another gentleman, you shouldn't say gentleman, another man, um, he would travel back and forth from Oklahoma to Texas, and he was on a killing spree. And I actually just recently covered this story, and the only reason they caught him is because one of the women that he kidnapped, she's like, this isn't happening to me. I'm not going to be raped. She jumped out of a moving vehicle on the highway, was critically injured, put in ICU, but her testimony is what put him behind bars for 60 years. And then the police were like, we probably should run his DNA. And that's when he was found to be Laura Smither's murderer and many other women. Like, and then he was up here in Oklahoma and he's confessed to more murders, and they extradited him to Texas, and he's serving 3 consecutive life sentences down there for even more murders. But he was in prison for only 10 years for the rape and sexual assault of a woman, then released, and 93 days later, he killed Laura Smither, a 12-year-old girl running in Texas. Just 12-year-old girl running, and he should have still been in prison. He should have been in prison. He should never been released. Like, that is something that it fires me up so much. Like, how
Yeah.
many times men are able to get away with this? And it's just not a running thing. Like, if you look at the broad picture of how many cases are out there unsolved, how many DNA kits, rape kits sit waiting to be tested, and they don't do anything, and they could get murderers off the street and prevent us from being killed. But that's, yeah, they don't want to do that because it uses funds, or maybe it'll solve problems. Without problems, no one's complaining, and without complaining, they don't have an agenda, right? I don't know. Anyways, I'm really
My
fired up about
God.
that.
Well, no, and thank goodness that you are, because you're out here sharing these stories, right? And raising awareness. So your whole purpose is to raise awareness and to bring light to these sort of unsolved cases, right? And also to help women protect themselves when they're out there running or walking. I should say that too, running or walking, being
Yes.
active.
Walking, running, jogging, um, anything, like just being out there, just being allowed to do the same thing that a man can do comfortably. And I'm not saying that violence does not happen against men, but a man running down the road isn't going to be going, what's that car going to
Yeah.
do? Are they slowing down? Are they, and then they're tighten, like I'm tightening my grip on my go guarded. I'm like ready. And I'm just like, okay. And my heart rate, like if you look at my data, like you can tell every time a car passes me by because my heart rate spikes. Like it is
Yeah.
fear. And that's something that I wish could be put out there more, in the sense of, we're not here to make a propaganda or anything. We're literally fighting for our lives. Like,
Yeah.
we're stalked, we're harassed, and we're told, oh, if you don't wear that, it wouldn't happen. I'm sorry. Tell that to the 10-year little girl who was walking to the store fully dressed in her gym clothes from school, her school clothes, and she was raped and murdered. And by the way, her DNA of her killer has sat in evidence for 52 years with nothing done. And along with 5 other little girls in that case. So that's something that like irritates me too, is if you just didn't wear these clothes, nothing would happen to you. No, that's not like, no, there are men out there who just want to do violence because they want to do violence. And
Yeah.
putting them behind bars and holding stricter penalties and all these things. So my therapist says this is ever evolving. Like where I started. When I first started, I just shared details about the runner.
Yeah.
And the more I got into it, the more I was like, I want to share a little more. And when April hit, that's when I felt like it was the best thing for me, was being shut down constantly, because I took the different approach. I found these 47 women who were not heard of, um, or forgotten. And I'm even finding more and more women each time. Like, I go through research, like my little iPad here is just full of names that I'm like, if I see an article and it's tied to a killer or tied to anything, I put it in there so I can research their names later. I constantly am going down a rabbit hole, like
Yeah.
just learning. But those rabbit holes really is what finds data and finds things that need to be said. One of the stories I did, it would have been in the 70s, 1979. I was researching, but there was an African American woman who was brutally killed by a burglar. And someone in that complained that, just like today's times, she didn't get the coverage she needed, but this person got the coverage. And so I typed, the woman's name in that died, and typing her name in gave me what's called the Phantom Highway Killer. And that's how I was able to find the 6 young Black girls who were murdered in Washington, D.C., Baltimore, and Maryland. And those are the cases that have DNA on hand for 52 years. And I know it has to be like a government official or someone who's high up, because if you're smart enough to know to leave bodies in different jurisdictions that don't know where they so they don't talk to each other, then you got to be up there. The
Yeah.
way the bodies were found, the way the bodies were placed, it just screams someone in the government or an official, public official or something. I just, there's too many things about these cases that, ooh. And then the other thing I've learned also is how many men are behind bars that the prosecution and police just wanted to throw this on so they could get reelected. The last 3 cases I've done have been that way. Their killers are still at large. The people that they pinned it on, there's the DNA does not match, but they don't care. They're super insistent. They're like, oh, we're going to get them. It doesn't matter. We know they did it. But it's like the DNA doesn't match. So you're letting a
Yeah.
killer go out there, go free, who's going to keep doing the same thing over and over. But it's okay. It's okay. We're going to pin it on this guy. And that's just 3 cases. Like the last 3 cases I've done, and those families get no justice. They feel like they're going to get justice, and then it's ripped away from them. One of the cases I am researching right now, and I'm loving it, is in Washington State. I'm not loving the fact that she was
Yeah. Yeah.
killed, but
Yeah.
I'm
No,
loving
I
the
get
fact
it.
of what the family did. So this man was supposed to be he was supposed to be behind bars, but he got an early release, okay? And then he was supposed to be watched by his parole officer and visited several times a month. And he was visited 6 times in a 3-year period. And anyways, in one of those times, he was caught with an underage girl. Nothing was done. And I know all this because of the court documents. When they come out, the parole officer had to testify and all this stuff. And so anyways, he goes and kills another runner and flees. And so when he flees, he comes across another woman who was not, she was just at a gas station or rest stop, but he ends up slicing her throat. She holds her neck together, calls 911, and is writing down what happened. And they were able to pinpoint, like, because she had a payphone, and they were able to pinpoint where she was. And because of what she wrote down, they were able to catch the killer, and she lived, which is amazing. Like,
Yeah.
so they go down the road, and they find this van. They find the man, and they pull him over. And before they can go, hey, you're under arrest, he shoots and kills himself. And so his DNA matches the woman in Washington State, and obviously the woman who he tried to kill. And so when that happened, the family's like, no, this guy was a bad guy. He should have been behind prison. The family sued the state of Washington for $8.8 million and won. They were granted that
Nice.
in a settlement. Well, actually, they settled. So it tells you how many times, like, I wonder how many of these families could sue these states because they don't care. Like, they're not running DNA. They're not protecting these women. They're not doing anything to make sure that we're safe. Like, it just, it irks me. I'll just a little
So,
bit. But
so
knowing that these
how,
people can sue, go ahead.
yeah, how
Sorry.
has this helped your mental health?
Um, I feel like some days are hard, don't get me wrong. Like some
Yeah,
days I just have to close my laptop thing, or I have to close my computer and I have to read a book because the details of some of these cases are just But
yeah,
mentally I feel like I don't know, it's given me something to do, and it makes me feel like I'm making a difference in the world. I'm a stay-at-home mom. And so I have a lot of time on my hands. And so honestly, it makes me feel good. So feeling good mentally is better for you. Um, I'm not quite sure how to answer that fully just because
yeah,
there are days that are hard and then there's days that are good. The connections I'm making, the influences I'm having, I know I'm making a difference.
yeah,
And I know it's gonna be a long journey for anything that I really want to happen, especially with DNA testing. But I guess it's going okay mentally.
yeah. So,
I do feel better mentally to do this, like knowing that I'm
yeah, well,
helping
because it gives you
someone.
a purpose, right? Like it's giving you, I'm sure like a lot of it is
Yes.
scary and you know, um alarming, right? But like it gives you that purpose of, sharing the stories. Have you connected with some of these families that are impacted by these situations?
No, I try my hardest um to kind of like stay away from that.
Yeah.
Um, I don't want to. I did tag Nancy Aldman. I always butchered her last name. I did tag her daughter in the last story I did because from her daughter's book, I got a lot of the information, and I did not want to like plagiarize or anything. And plus, things that she said about her mom just it. I don't know. It made me really like I want to be that way too. And it's her statement is choose joy. Um,
Mhm.
and her mom was like left pieces of paper around the house all the time. There was like joy, choose joy, just joyful stuff like to boost their spirits. And um her mom was taken while out on a run. And she even begged the man not to take her. Um she prayed for him like right before he killed her. Like all these things telling him, God loves you, you don't have to do this. And he still killed her. Um but thankfully he was caught right away and apprehended, but because he walked right out when someone was passing by. And then they had several other witnesses, and then he went to court, and or not court, but he went to the police station and confessed everything down to very horrific details. And yeah, but I tagged her because I got so much knowledge about her mom from her book. And I was like, well, and it started out as her thesis. Like she didn't plan on writing a book. She was just like, I'm going to have this as my thesis. And then it became this book about her mom and choosing joy and how to live a life that's better versus what has happened to you pretty much. And I was like, okay. But I do my best not to bring the families into this. Like sometimes like people will message me and they go, I know this person, or I grew up with this person, or like one individual, Laura Smither. 3 people messaged me and said, I was in ballet class with her. I was in Girl Scouts with her. Or one girl, I don't remember exactly what she was. She was in the community. And I was like, oh, it's heartbreaking. Um, I know like, I don't want to bring more grief to the families, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at. And it's like a fine line of like, why are you doing this then? Um, I do it for the women who were lost, but I also
Yeah.
know that old memories could be very harmful to families. Um, and if they come across it, great. And that's how it was supposed to be. If they never come across it, then that's how it's supposed to be too. But that's my take on that part. So I try not to do it for the clout, I guess. And then maybe I also feel like if the families get involved, they're gonna be like, oh my gosh, look at this, look at this, look at this, which is also great at the same time. I'm not a hey, look at me person. I'm a
Yeah.
hey, look at this person. So yeah.
I get it. I get it.
This is very hard to do, by the way.
I know it is, and I appreciate you doing it, but I
But
also know like how cool it is what you're doing, right? And it's so important, right? And it reminds me, remember that thing that was going around TikTok a couple months ago? Like if you were to see in the woods a bear or a man, what would be the thing that you feared the most? And a lot of women say the
mhm,
man, not the bear. I'd rather see a bear in the woods than a man in the
yeah.
woods, right? Like because it's scary. And I think as a woman, we've all had situations where we've been either like catcalled or honked at or have had scary experiences us to happen to us running or not running. So what you're doing is really powerful, to raise awareness and to be like, so I mean, it sounds like, because I know like as a runner, we sort of hear these stories of the ones that we lost, but it sounds like these are like white women. Like it's a lot of like the white women stories that we hear about and not minorities. And certainly I didn't even know about this indigenous people, like that's insane to me that they're not even like they're not getting any of the spotlight that the other cases do, and that's really mind-blowing. How do we fix this? Like what do we do? How can we help you in your mission?
Um, that's honestly something I've personally struggled with myself. Because obviously I have blonde hair, I have blue eyes, I am white. I am the epitome of, oh my gosh, she went missing. Let's plaster her all over the news.
Yeah.
Like I'm that, like I know I have that privilege. And like that was something else. And I mean, no disrespect to any of the women we lost this year, but when we plaster the same beautiful woman over and over and over on this screen, it does nothing to help minorities.
No.
It does nothing to help our cause. It does nothing at all but make people think that only white, beautiful women run. Only white, educated women run. Like when we leave it to one picture, just one, of an individual, that's all we're painting. And like I said, I mean, no disrespect because you are bringing awareness, but using one individual for your platform or your mission while disregarding every other woman who has died the exact same way is not fair. It's not. Um, but yes, I do think about that a lot. And I think maybe that's another reason that I'm kind of like, I want to stay behind, like, and not be the center of attention because I am white. I have blonde hair. I have blue eyes. Like,
Right.
I know my privilege. And I know that some people are going to be like, oh, well, she only got that far because she's a white woman or she's this or that. And I don't know. I think about that stuff quite often. But in the sense of when people comment, I try to bring it back to those who are still missing or those cases who are unsolved. Like recently, someone commented on Laura Smither's case, and they said, "This is when I have to stop reading when it involves children." And I said, "Well, there are 6 young Black girls who are still like no justice has been given to them, none." And I said, "They deserve it just as much as she got." And that's the other thing I feel like happens too is one, I know that their cases are mm, happened during the civil rights movement. Let me pull up, this is going to take a minute to get down to this time. But the first young girl which I believe was, yes, Carol Denise Spinks. She died, or she went missing April of 1971. And it says April 25th of 1971, Carol walked to buy groceries at a 7-Eleven a half a mile away from her home, just across the border of Maryland. So it was something that she did regularly. And it's something like, if we look back, times were different. Like, you could send your kid to the grocery store. I think about all the times that I rode my bike or ran or did kinds of crazy things as a 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old girl that I dare would not even allow my 13-year-old boy to do today.
Yeah.
But she went missing, and 4 days, I'm trying to remember this correctly, 4 days before that, the bus integration happened, to where they had to put all the kids, didn't matter what color you were, all the kids rode the same bus. So I really think that this had to do with some politicalness, because this person didn't stop with Carol. A
Yeah.
few days later, not really a few days later, a few weeks later, the next one, then the next one. And then they waited a whole year before killing, I believe it was Brenda. Let's see, I may have messed that one up. No, I'm so sorry. Before they killed Denise, or Diane Denise Williams. All of these girls lived in the same vicinity too, like close to the same school, and I'm talking like walking distance. They all lived near the same apartment in Colonial Heights, like, which is a subdivision of Washington, D.C. So they all were right there, and it makes, I don't know, it just seems like such a political move, agenda. And if that was to happen today, whew,
Yeah.
I'd be on the streets.
Yeah.
Just saying, I'd be on the streets. Because it's not fair, and it's not fair that 52 years later this is still going on. But sharing these stories of these girls, like, not just sharing the white women, but sharing their stories, sharing, like, we have, give me one moment.
Well, and
I got to get
that's
to my
what we
lead.
can do as white women, right? Like, we can't feel bad about our privilege, but we can talk about the injustices and how we believe that every woman deserves to be heard and
Yes,
every case deserves to be researched. So, kudos to you for doing what you're
yes.
doing. That's what matters, that we stand up and say this isn't right, and we
Thank
have
you.
to speak from the privilege that we have. That's why I'm always yelling about white men to my husband, because I'm like, you have a responsibility as a white man to stand up for us. Use your privilege
Yeah,
to speak to the people that don't have.
and I was just recently, yes, yeah, I was recently talking to someone about privilege, in that sense of, so many women blindly follow their husbands, and I was one of those individuals who met the raft of those type of women. Um, I went to a group. We won't say exactly what I did. I went to a group, and I was there for an hour, 2 hours. And after the thing was over, I'd recently shared the day before that women should be allowed to run in sports bras. Like, there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. Like, we should be allowed to run how we want to run. Well, it was brought up that if women didn't run in sports bras, if they didn't run,
Oh no. Are you there? She'll come back. I know it.
Yay!
Hey, oh, I am so sorry about that.
Don't worry at all. I'm gonna
Oh,
need
we
to
got to
come
fix
back.
this. So I had to. So my 13-year-old son used my charger, my charging block. I have a battery charger. Um, because I knew that my old phone was gonna die, and
Oh,
I was like, oh, I'll just plug this in and it'll work. No, it was not charging the entire time, and we just sucked the battery out. So
oh,
I had to run inside and get my charger.
yay! Well, I'm glad you're back.
So,
So, yeah, so when you were
okay. So the
saying
last
something
thing
about skimpy, I was like waiting on edge.
oh yes, 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 yes. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
So they told me that if we didn't wear those types of clothing, we wouldn't be harassed, and that men were just going to sin, and we shouldn't give them a reason to.
there.
Yeah.
No.
It's women like that who are blindly following their husbands who don't speak out that continues this path of, well, what were they wearing? Well, they shouldn't have been running alone, or they were asking for it. Yeah. Those are the types of, yeah. Let me try. I'm going to blur this. Can I blur this? No, I can't. Trying to blur my,
Oh, don't even worry. I'm like in my messy
it's
kitchen, so
okay.
don't worry. We do lots of imperfect around here. We're very like go with the flow. It was so funny when I had my first podcast interview. She was like so nervous, and I'm like, it's like a conversation in my kitchen. I promise you. Like, I'm not super fancy. Yeah, that is mind blowing. So, like, when let me ask you this: like, when you're running, do you have a safety protocol? Do you share your location with people? Do you wear mace? Like, what do you do?
So prior to starting She Didn't Come Home, honestly, I give zero fucks. Like, I just ran. Now, if I heard something, I'm like, okay, what's going on? But I had zero idea what was actually out there.
Yeah,
I always thought I'm a veteran. I've taken self-defense classes. If someone wants to mess with me, they're gonna get the rough end of the rough end. And once I started exploring these stories of these women, I'm like, oh my God, these women were highly trained, or these women were in the military. Um, these women had dogs, these women had weapons on them, and they still were killed. And so after like reading these stories, when was able to start running again in April, um, I texted my sister before and I was like, anytime I run, I'm sharing my location with you. I'm letting you know, hey, I'm running. I'll text you when I'm done running. I'm going to tell you how long it's going to take me. If you don't hear from me, you let me know. And like anytime something goes wrong with my running, I know it's going to take longer. I'm like, I'm still out here running. It's okay. But like that's my plan to know, like, because if she doesn't hear from me, it's my sister who's going to be calling the cops going, hey, I haven't heard from my sister. Like we have it's almost a 6-year snap streak, if that tells you anything. We talk every single day. Like, so if she doesn't hear from me, then something's wrong.
yeah.
If I'm not annoying her, then something's wrong. But I also, so besides sharing my location with my sister, giving her the details of my run, telling her where I'm going to be running, um, I picked up and learned about Go Guarded from another runner. And she was like running, and I was like, what is it on her hand? And so I asked her, and she's like, it's my Go Guarded tool. And I was like, what is this? And so I went to the website, and it's a woman-owned company. She specializes in self-defense, and she personally was attacked herself. And she wanted to give something out to women that would change their lives. And it's like not expensive either. It's a pretty good, like my pepper spray and my knife that fit on my hand, pretty easy, cost me $21.95. Like the best investment I've ever spent. I've actually used it against a dog.
I
And I got that
always
on
say
video, which was
that.
insane. I was like running, recording myself. Yeah. And I'm like, why is this dog like this dog?
Yeah.
And I like stopped and I treated it like a man. What I did for self-defense, I said, stop, stay back, get. And it just kept coming at me. And when it lunged, I went shoop and I got it in its nose and it took off. And I'm like, well, my knife worked.
Yeah.
Like I didn't have to use my spray or anything at that time. So I do that. I pay more attention to my surroundings now and I have an escape plan. Like, I run around our lake here and I'm like, well, if they want to get me, they can get wet because I'm jumping in the water. Or if they want to get me, they're going to have to do this and this. Like, I have plans. Like, if I'm out running in our neighborhood, then I'm like, well, someone's going to get some bangs on their door. Like, someone's going to get a window, a car alarm's going to be going off. I'm going to have attention coming to me. I'll pay for their damages later. Like, it's better than me not being here. I learned about, like, so many people are like, oh, you should carry a gun with you. And I'm like, no. And I have, like, I am a gun lover. I'm sorry. I grew up and I understand guns and I treat guns with safety, but telling a woman that they should run with a gun is about the stupidest thing you can do. One, we're easily overpowered. Two, the Toller research, which was done in the 80s, shows that at 21 feet, you have no chance of pulling out a weapon and saving your life because the person will be in front of you before you can do anything. And if you're pulling that gun out, you're pulling it from wherever it needs to be pulled from. They're pretty much already almost going to be on top of you before you can unload your safety, before you can do anything to point, shoot, they're on top of you. And they did that starting with, I think it was 84 feet back, and they just kept going. And then they would redo it all the way up. And they got down to 21 feet was the point that you had your reaction time was not there. You didn't have reaction to safely defend yourself.
Yeah.
And so that's where hand tools can come into play. And there's lots of different companies out there, not just Go Guarded, who provide it. I think Safely Defense, I may be saying that company's
So is
name
Go
wrong. It's
Guard It
another
like
woman-owned
it's
company.
like a tool?
And then there's Running Now.
Go Guard It is like a tool?
Yes,
Okay.
it's a yes. I'm going to break her heart when I say this. So I gave my mine to my sister, and I have not purchased another one. So I can't show you what it looks like. I need to get one before I get to Savannah because I'm going to be running in Savannah by myself. But it also means I'm probably going to have to check luggage because there's no way they're going to let me carry that on the plane. So I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But it's just it's a nylon carbon, I believe, little knife, and it's covered in silicone. So you don't like hit yourself. And I'm so awkward when it comes to like running. I'm like constantly like hitting just doing everything. And I've never been cut with it. I've never accidentally sprayed myself in the face with mace,
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it comes with that. I think they have a taser one now. I'm not
Oh, cool.
100% sure. They have ones that can go on your fingers, so you can just go.
Love it.
But I feel like having a close-up weapon to protect yourself is the best thing you can do. And I don't want to quote the actual percentage because I know I'll probably be wrong, but it does state that if you run with a weapon and that it can be visibly seen, that means a dog, a knife, anything, you are less likely to be attacked if they can see that you can defend yourself. One of the worst cases that I read here lately was a woman named Cynthia. And she was in New York and she ran with a weapon. But this is the other thing that comes into play. If you're going to run with a weapon, you cannot be scared to use that weapon. You cannot be scared if someone's coming up to you because that's what ended her life. The perpetrator, like in all his court, like I pay for trials to have court documents, newspapers, like all kinds of stuff so I can get as much detail as possible. But in his court documents that like he was testifying, he said that he was urinating in public, and she was running by, and she yelled at him to use a public restroom and stop being a bum. And he said, it made me so angry because I'm tired of people yelling at me and being mean to me. So he walks up to her and she's like, get back. And he said, this is what made him do it. I could tell she was scared. So I ripped out her weapon from her, and we won't go into details, but yeah, it was one of the most, behind Karen, it's probably one of the most horrific stories I've had to read, and take a break from after reading it. But she had so much potential. She just had a baby. The baby was 6 months old. She was a high school track and cross country coach. She empowered kids so much to believe in themselves. One of her students ended up going in for the New York Olympic trials and then going into being an Olympian, all because of the values that she instilled in him and told him, hey, you're far better than what you're putting out. You're not putting out enough. And he's like, okay. And he pushed himself harder. And because of that, because of her coaching, she developed an Olympian. But because this asshole decided that he was just tired of being bullied, I guess. I don't know the correct word for that. He should just take her life. Yeah. So, and he only served 6 months for the oh my gosh. That's what I mean about the speech thing.
That's a hard one, though.
For the y'all know what I'm
Burglary.
trying to say. And the sexual assault, yeah, like he served 6 months for that and sexual assault of another woman. And that morning, before he killed Cynthia, he was driving drunk, of all things. He'd been drinking since 8:30 p.m. the night before and kept bar hopping, going to different places, goes to a friend's home, drinks more, and then leaves, drops off this person, his friend at 7-Eleven, ends up going around this corner, run into a woman in her car. He gets out, assaults her, and steals her purse and tries to steal her car, like with her in it, like, obviously. She escapes, immediately calls 911. So at 5:51 a.m., 911 calls going out. And at 6 a.m., Cynthia is running out her door to meet. And so he denied everything at first until they told him, we found the wallet at this scene. Like, so the woman's wallet he stole was found within the vicinity of Cynthia's body. And then he just broke down and told them every single detail of what he did to her. And that's the crazy thing, is how many of these people deny. And then there's so much evidence there and they're like, oh, yeah, I did it. And they have no remorse whatsoever. But he's another example of, he should have still been behind bars, but he got 6 months. 6 months. Like, that's a slap on the wrist. My kid has 6 months of community service that I signed him himself for saying some words at school he should have never said.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, 6 months is nothing.
The justice is not there. Like, she's another. No. Like, but it's, and I guarantee you he would have got a longer sentence had he had done the same thing to a man. We'll say sexual assault, but had he burglarized him, stole his car, ran into him, like all these things. It's because, honestly, it's because we're women that we don't get the justice, because they're like, whatever. Like, it's time and time again, it's just shown that that's not what happens. Like, we're not cared about enough to make change. It doesn't matter until it happens to their family that they're going to do changes. It won't matter until a senator's daughter, a senator's wife, a president's daughter, president's wife, any of those things, like someone so high up, it won't matter to those people until it happens to them. Like, it won't.
Yeah.
I had someone say that to me when I went through a cancer scare last year. And that's another reason that got me to do this whole thing, was the amount of things said to me while I'm going through that. Oh, you just need to let it go. Don't think about it. I'm not supposed to think about the 5 lumps in my chest? Like, what? I'm not supposed to be worried. And someone said this to me. They said, no matter what, people are going to react this way until they're in those shoes.
Yeah.
They're going to think that they can resolve and handle all things until they're in those shoes. And so that's really stuck with me a lot, is things won't change until someone else is in the shoes that we're in and they realize how bad it is. So, anyways,
Well, it is.
I could keep going and going and going.
It's amazing what you're doing. I love following along, you know, on your page, and just like it's so powerful what you're up to, and I'm so impressed with what you're doing, and thank you for being here and sharing what you've learned, and you know how women can protect themselves, and hopefully how we can move the needle forward to more of these cases being recognized and heard and investigated and punished, right? Like, that's what we need.
Yeah. What we can do is just share, and if you see a case, like, I mean, you can share it yourself, you can send it to me, however it needs to be done. Like I said, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I paid for these subscriptions. I want justice
Yeah.
to be found for a lot of these women, like all of these women, not a lot of
Yeah.
these women. But, and then even if it comes to people who are behind bars that don't belong there, and there's killers still out in the street because they had an agenda, then, I mean, there's so much that is here that needs to be. I opened Pandora's box, I do believe, when I started this. And it's not like, I did not expect it to go this way. I expected just to share these women's stories, and that was that. I never envisioned myself 8 months ago going, yeah, I think I'm going to be an advocate for DNA testing, for women's rights, which I already am an advocate for women's rights, but like advocate for women's rights. I'm going to be advocate for rape kit testing, all this stuff, and to be a voice for the unheard. So,
Sorry, my dog.
it's interesting.
Sorry.
You're okay.
So
You're fine. My dog was just barking and almost took off.
oh, no.
But I was like, oh, nope, I can't do that.
So the best way for people to get a hold of you is your Instagram page, that She Didn't Come Home.
Yeah, I have a website that I have now. It's a lot for me, because I spend a lot of time researching, and so I just have the 6 stories up there of the young Black girls right now. That's all I have up, and I'm trying to, get through a lot of these stories, which I know I won't finish, which I knew I wouldn't finish a long time ago before everyone is marathon. But it doesn't mean I'm going to stop, and I'm not going to stop running for these women. I'm not going to stop being an advocate. Like, yeah. But I have an email. It's shedidn'tcomehome@gmail.com. I have the website, and all these are linked into my bio. And then just Instagram, however you want to do it. Like, I'm out there. I have to remember always to check my request folder, because you would not believe the amount of stuff that you get in your DMs.
I know.
Like, and it is only because of the hashtags I share. And I'm like, this is so disgusting. You don't know what I share on this page, and you're wanting me to do this?
Yeah.
Like,
I know. Instagram can be an
anyway,
interesting
but I
place.
have to continuously remember to check my request folder.
Yeah.
Like, one of my friends, she had people request feet pics, and I'm like, what? Why? Why? Like, can we just not be normal out here? It's so, Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it so much, and keep doing your thing. And I'm going to send everybody your way, and I just appreciate you. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Of course. Well, have a wonderful day, and we'll
Okay,
talk
I'll
soon.
get better about these podcasts as we go on.
You did awesome. You nailed it.
All right. Bye, Melissa.
Bye.
I nailed it.
You did.
Well, the